When we were considering retiring, we've had on our mind whether we would be bored. Is retirement actually boring? Is it something that we're going to enjoy? So we wanted to see, is retiring early actually a good idea? Will you be bored? And all those questions, I hope we'll be answering some of them in this first video, where we talk about early retirement, thinking about it, and what it means for your day-to-day life. I'm Frank.
Hi, I'm Kim.
And we're FNK Live. Now, first of all, there were lots of questions that popped up in our heads.
So it is that. Will we be bored? Will you lose purpose?
Yes.
Will you lose all your friends from work? And the question we hadn't really considered till we started it is, can you spend 24/7 with just your partner?
The jury's still out on that one.
Yes, that could be a whole other video. But you do question when you're approaching that point in your life, when you're considering retiring, what's it going to be like? And should you be worried or not?
Maybe you're considering early retirement yourself. That means you're still in your super fast go-go years, and you think, well, I've got so much to give to the world. My job is really fulfilling. If I stop working today, then actually the research I'm working on or the people I'm helping through work might be missing me. And that is an important consideration, certainly. You have to think whether you enjoy your work, I think. And for us, we've both had got to a point where
we were getting a bit jaded with it.
A bit jaded with it. And we had achieved what we wanted to do. So really it's going to be a personal decision for yourself. But also the idea that you should be productive in your go-go years is fantastic. But should you be more selfish? Why not? Are you wasting effectively all your best years, your go-go years, being stuck behind a desk or working for other people when actually you could be doing something really more personal? Maybe the money is not an issue anymore. You could work on a project. It doesn't have to be what we're doing, which is traveling. It could be art. It could be some other project you have, or dedicating more time to your friends rather than spending all the time you have at work. So let's see maybe how it impacted, both of us, and what questions we did ask ourselves, and maybe later on how we started answering them.
So I think one of the big ones is you do recognise that you're going to lose that structure that work gives you. It has that timetable where you get up at the same time and you go off to work and you both do that and do your separate things, separate lives. You come back in the evening, you kind of cook and then chat, and then it repeats the next day, and you just have your weekends, if you're lucky, to do fun things. But you wonder, with all the time that work takes up, what it's going to be like suddenly not having that there.
That's true. And when we did stop working, suddenly we had a lot of time, and we really struggled initially on, how can we fill that time? It was an interesting thing that because we were traveling, it was filled quite quickly with travel and planning. But even then we realized, oh my God, these are really long.
Yes.
When you remove the sort of 8-hour work day and the 2-3-hour commute around this, and we had quite a lot of planning before that, so we were really busy anyway. But suddenly, days are long, and you kind of think, okay, well, will I be too lazy suddenly, doing nothing, lounging? And also, we should underestimate that creating a new routine is really difficult, starting from scratch. So if you go from 80 miles an hour, work, and then we had side projects on top of that, and rest of the weekend, and party the rest of the time, to, you have nothing to do, no place to be, no time to wake up. Creating your routine from nothing was probably the biggest challenge. And after 2.5 years,
it's still kind of ongoing of everything. And I think you really shouldn't underestimate for the first part of your retirement that potentially, I guess it's not just us, but a lot of people rethink where they are currently, and you might choose to downsize, or you might look at projects at home you want to do. But for us, where we knew we were going to downsize, there is a lot of work involved in doing that, of deciding where you're going to move to, what you're going to keep, what you really don't need.
And also adjusting to what is it that's really important to you.
Yeah.
After 2.5 years, I'm still looking at, this is what we value the most now. We want more of this, less of that. But it will take a while. So also, we'll talk about the solutions we came up with, but take a breath and don't think you're going to have everything sorted in your first 6 months of retirement or your first year even of retirement. Give yourself time to find out who you are.
And I think also for us, during the time that we'd been together, there had been periods where either I'd worked and Frank wasn't, or, you know, other way around, Frank was out working and I had time between jobs. And that was quite useful, actually, just having time to yourself and that, you know, brief hiatus where you're not full on at work, where you get to actually think about what is it that you want to do and how does it feel not going to work every day, but knowing that you haven't got that financial pressure of like both of you not working if you're not quite ready for it. But it's a good like little practice run.
It was, yes. The other thing is people mention often that money, you know, for the 20 years when you're in the fire, says you're putting all your money aside to save for that day when you're going to retire, and then it's really hard to switch to spending mode. Now suddenly you give yourself permission to spend. Well, it's the same with routine and hard work. Giving yourself permission to actually not work, to maybe do nothing, just sit in a terrace somewhere in Europe and sip coffee or wine or beer and then just watch the world go around and accept that it's okay to do nothing with your days. This instincts we have to be productive and useful can really work against you. And that is something is worth considering. You know, it's not just the going from saving to spending, it's also going from hyper productivity to it's allowed to do less and to choose what you want to do. And again, with the money worries, we had a consideration that a lot of the ways we coped with stress and boredom when we were working was by throwing money at it. So we would buy an expensive holiday, we would go to an expensive meal or a fun gig or concert, and we did spend a lot of money. And there's a worry that actually when you stop working and you have all those hours to fill and all those days with no work, then you end up spending way more money because, well, hey, I'm bored, I need to spend money. And it doesn't matter if it's food, drink, or shows, or more travel. And often the solution is like to fast travel to fill the time so you don't feel that boredom. And that can be really, really expensive. And we were concerned that our budget was limited, like everybody's budget is limited. We had to be self-aware of this.
And I think that was a good lesson or understanding for us, that you'd be surprised. A lot of that spending that you do in your work years is just linked to the stress of going into work and then feeling like, well, you deserve something fun.
Yes, definitely.
Whereas when you don't have the negative work aspects, actually, it's fine that we have this time and we can just go for a walk, or as you say, we can just sit and buy a coffee and sit somewhere. But you don't actually have that same drive to spend the money in that way that you do when you're working so hard and on the treadmill of work.
True. You may be concerned that retirement will be boring. You also have to remember that work is not always fulfilling.
No.
Sometimes it's really boring too, you know. Especially when you get up early and finish late, and those days when you're sitting and you could feel yourself going, oh.
And man, those Zoom calls were like,
yes,
or any meetings were a bit torturous.
So you might find that there's a tendency to, I don't know, look at those working days as oh, that was so much fun and I was so productive and it was amazing. Beware of the rose-tinted glasses, you know, remember how bored and frustrated you are at work. And then when you're bored and frustrated in retirement, think, it's a higher quality of boredom and frustration.
Yeah.
It's more comfortable.
No, it's much easier. And then you do have that worry where you've worked and you've achieved whatever you have and you have your title or, you know, teams you look after.
I don't.
Are you going to feel differently once you retire when you don't have that? And it's kind of strange with society of, like, when you meet people, the first question you always get is like, oh, what do you do? Like, what's your job? And it is quite strange now that we've stopped working. It's like, well, what is our job?
What is our job? Yeah, what are we? You have to be careful not to associate your identity with your work identity.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not easy to find who you are beyond work. We still don't know how to introduce ourselves. We can say, well, okay, we're early retired and traveling the world and doing nothing really. Which sounds a bit weird and lazy and not very easy to say. So then you start replacing things. We're not just retired because, you know, we're not that old. We could describe ourselves, and that it would be a stretch as YouTube content creators, travel vloggers or whatever, but we don't qualify for this. We do some videos, but it's not a job, and it's certainly not our identity. We like to share what we do. So it's difficult to find. What else are we? I think the best one, I think, is hedonistic dilettantes.
Or just full-time slow travellers.
Or full-time slow travelers, yeah. Hedonistic, because we are seeking pleasure and fun and happy time. And dilettante, because we don't do that much, you know. So, yeah. So how did we handle it? And how did it actually impact us? And what solutions did we come up with? Well, the first thing is to notice that the first year of your retirement, you're going to be too busy to notice you're bored. Okay, there's so much to plan, so boredom doesn't fit in your first year or two. It's a bit like a honeymoon. The planning before we retired, we were so busy, and Kim finished working maybe like a few months certainly before I did, so even then there was a lot to plan. So don't worry too much about it, and give yourself time to think, because there was a long period for us, which was maybe a year and a half or so, where we're like so near yet so far. We were almost ready, but not quite almost ready. And it seemed like it was our retirement, and that time when we could finally rest and do nothing was always around the corner. It still is, probably.
Yeah, and it does take time to downsize everything if that's what you choose to do, or you know, make that list of some of the things you want to do in retirement.
Even deciding which country and which continent to do and in what order, that was a lot of thinking. So it does keep you busy, there is no question.
And I think the other thing is you should give yourself grace of that transition from working every day and the stresses that you don't really appreciate till you stop that you're under. So actually just taking that time to recover from all of those years you've been working, and just take time to yourself and get used to, you can set your own rhythm and do whatever you want to do, is okay. It's all right to do that.
And again, it's not easy. You know, you have to go from super busy to, not busy enough. But it's giving yourself permission to breathe and take the time to recover and rebuild your strength and your inner motivation is an important thing. I mean, we were lucky enough when Kim stopped before me that we were able to try different things as well. I was able to work abroad, and that helped us a lot, because I could take a month in France working remotely. That was just after COVID, when it was kind of acceptable to work remotely. And that meant that Kim could be enjoying France and traveling and going to the shops and the markets.
Yeah, no, I could come with you, whereas if I'd been working, my work wouldn't have allowed me to work abroad, so I couldn't have done that. And, you know, you got to just get up early, log in, and we were kind of done by late afternoon, so we actually got more time to spend together and to be in like a fun, different city. So
for you, that was a really good trial retirement of traveling, being in a foreign country and just enjoying your life that way, keeping me busy at work.
Yes.
So the social isolation, that is a real thing as well. Like suddenly, especially when we started, I mean, you are busy and you spend all your time with your partner, and suddenly there's nobody else.
No, there isn't. But then, you know, I think in some ways, having gone through COVID, of that changing the work, the way that in which we worked. I mean, there were the good bits of being in work, was there were all the water cooler moments, as they refer to them, or you just like socialise a lot more with people in your team, or, you know, that work for the company. You would just have more of those spontaneous conversations. And I guess for me, like, a lot of those just disappeared when we suddenly were all at home. And I never went back full-time into the office. So it never really came back. And I think you then get that understanding of, even though you spend every day with these work colleagues, and you do think of them as like, you know, your friends and your work family, it is tied up with work. So there isn't a guarantee that once you're away from work that that's going to continue. And I'm not sure if that's a good or a bad thing. You know, there are certain people that I still am in contact with, but also I don't want to think about the work side of things, and you realise that how many of your conversations would just involve in the fact that you're in the same jobs at the same time, rather than whether they're actually true friendships.
Yes. I mean, that's the thing, you know, all the people, like, if you look soberly at everybody that you interact with every day, some will be friends that you will continue and stay in touch with, and other people are just people you spend time with, and you have something to discuss which is common. But once we give up work, suddenly you fall off the face of the earth for them as much as for yourself.
It's true.
You have nothing in common with them, so they don't really contact you and vice versa. So this is a real thing. And even your close friends, even your family, they don't live the life you have. So in that sense, they're busy with work themselves. So you don't really spend so much time with them, at least not initially, until you both organize a different routine and a different life. So it's important to think that social isolation does happen. It's replaced eventually by the fact that you do have suddenly a partner that you can speak to every day that doesn't have to disappear and go to work or doesn't come back from work stressed, whether it was me or you, both of us. So it means you have more, I hate the word, but you have more quality time.
Yeah.
And you can choose to take some space from each other or not. But you do eventually find that you need to make connections with the people on the road. And we did find this. We started making local friends, whether they were expats themselves or locals, and spend more time with them. And that is an important thing. And YouTube, in that sense, is also, we feel like we're part of the community, and we are talking to people that are doing what we're doing. So in the same way we had work friends, now we have travel friends,
yeah.
or YouTube friends, or people, or early retirement friends, people that share our experiences. And maybe that's what it's about, really. You need to sort of keep the people that share your experiences around. And talking about the spending 24/7 together, there's a real mystery or question as to how much time did you spend before retirement with your partner? If you worked, if you're away from home 60 hours a week, both of you, and then you have either kids or other responsibilities and things to deal with, DIY, or friends to visit, so you're not together anyway. Were you spending, 20 hours a week maximum? Do you know your partner? Do you know what they want from life? Have you taken the chance to have those conversations, which are not easy conversations when both of you are stretched from work?
Yeah.
So taking the time to find out who you are is one side of it, but also taking the time to find out who your partner is and what makes them happy and what makes them tick is in itself a full-time project. And it's worth investigating if you're interested in doing so, obviously.
Well, even if you think you're not interested in doing so, you really need to, because you do recognise then how little quality time that you got to spend together and to talk about different things.
Yes.
And we're really lucky that both of us were happy with the idea of travelling and to try out this lifestyle. But I think a lot of people just really do not consider what they want to do when they get into that next phase of their life, which is retirement. And
Blind.
do you both want the same things? You do
true.
need to have those conversations of, what does retirement look for you? And it is going to be a real thing.
Yes. I think it's funny because maybe 5 years ago or so, I was pushing to have more conversations to find out who you were, what you wanted. And it wasn't an easy thing because you were working. Kim had a really high-powered job and really stressful. So when we did have those conversations, and I pushed for them, Kim called them frank. Oh dear, is it time for a finish up? But those conversations need to happen. It wasn't easy to push them through, and it wasn't all coming from me. You had times where you wanted to have a Kim chat as well, and I was terrified at that point. But you need to have this conversation. Find out who you are. Talk a lot. It's not just about the budget and whether you'll have enough money, and even that you need to talk a lot about that too. What you want to do, what makes you happy, where do you want to be? And we had so many of those conversations that we got to a point where we understood that we're both on the same wavelength and we wanted to do the same thing. But even then, we had to tune it to a different, how long are we going to stay in each place?
Yeah.
Do we really want to go to this part of Europe or this part of Latin America and spend a month or two there? So we had a lot in common, but we didn't know for sure we did, and we had to find out.
It's okay not to have it all figured out, but, the general basis of, are you expecting as a couple that you're both going to be at home in the garden all day, every day, or as one of you got, the idea that they're just going to be with their friends down the golf club or who knows where else. It's good to agree what your retirement looks like.
And again, for this, don't let other people dictate or influence too much. Don't let the Joneses, is it Joneses?
Joneses.
The Joneses. Yeah. Some random neighbors. Don't let your neighbors, your family, your friends tell you how it should be, because they don't necessarily know you, or maybe they do, in which case they might have some good ideas. So do talk to people, but talk to each other.
Might be boring though.
That's true. Their solution might be quite. So don't, if you have something that you really want to do, well, the first thing to do is realize that you do and admit it to yourself. The second thing is discuss it with your partner, because if you really have a dream of living for 3 months in Asia, then you have to discuss that. And would you be happy living for 6 months or a year in Asia, for that matter? And then come to something that works for both of you. If you don't share, then you'll never implement that dream properly. And I think that's really important. So talk before you retire, during your retirement, and still, we still have those conversations.
Still talking.
Oh, we still talk.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think also recognise that this is just the next phase of your life, and it is natural that you get this end part where you've done all your work. You've studied when you've been a child, then you've got into your work life, you've had a family if that was your choice to do so, but that's behind you. You've hopefully been able to save up enough money to have a pension, to fund this next part, which should be for you and should be fun, or should at least be the life that you choose to have, rather than it being dictated to by work or any of the other pressures that you've had. Consider that it can be a fun thing being retired.
Yes. And depending on how early you retire, it could be a really long time as well. So there's a lot, so it could be 30, 40 years. And 30, 40 years is as much as you probably spent working.
Yeah,
so
true.
Consider that and say, okay, well, I worked for 35 years. Now the next 35 years, I need to be fulfilled, to fulfill my, my dreams and happiness.
And not to drift into it, and also to recognise, even if you say we get like 30 years or so doing it, it's unlikely that you're going to have your full health through all of that. So actually planning out anything that you want to do while you've got hopefully more energy and you're in better health, it's got to be worth doing.
So what are your fears? Are you bored now? Are you worried that you'll be even more bored maybe in the future? Do you have any big projects that you've always dreamt of doing in retirement? And does your partner know about those projects? Is she on board with this, or he on board with this? So make sure you discuss this. Let us know in the comments what really worries you, because we might have the answers to this. We tried to think of all the things we got worried about, but everybody's experience is different. So we wanted to share that part of it. And in our next week's video, we're asking the question, is travel or full-time travel, slow traveling, the solution? We think it is for us, but it might not be for you. So tune in next week to find out how it went.
So don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell to see the next week's episode. And we thank you very much for joining us.
Oh yes, we can't wait to talk to you next week.
Bye.